Hey everybody, so in this video we're going to talk about simplifying square roots. So the first thing we want to say is, when is a square root fully simplified? Okay, so let's talk about the two conditions. Okay, so the first one is the one that we're going to focus on in this video, and that's there are no perfect square factors. Okay, except one, right? We know that everything has one as a factor, and it's not really going to help us simplify to factor that one out. Okay, the second condition is something that we are going to focus on in our next video, and this is that the radicand, or the inside part, is actually positive. Okay, so in this video we're going to focus on the first condition, that there's no perfect square factors, and then the second video we will focus on getting a positive radicand. Okay, so let's look at an example of simplifying. Okay, so we're going to start with square root of 44. So what we want to do is think of things that divide 44, and we want to think of anything that is a perfect square. So we know that 1 divides 44, and like we said, 1 isn't really going to be helpful in terms of simplification. We know that 2 divides 44, but that's not a perfect square. Okay, 3 does not divide 44. 4 divides 44, and that is a perfect square. So we're going to split this up into 4, which is the perfect square part, and the leftover part, which is 11, right? 4 is the part that's a perfect square, and then 11 is the part that's left over, what we need to make up 44. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and split up my square root like this: square root of 4 times square root of 11, and that's going to give me 2 times the square root of 11. Okay, because I know the square root of 4 is 2. All right, let's look at another example. Okay, so I'm going to look at square root of 100. Okay, now this whole thing is a perfect square. Okay, so without doing any split up, I can see that square root of 100 is 10. Okay, now if you didn't know that square root of 100 was 10, you could split this up and say that 10, or that 100 is 4 times 25, right? You'd have square root of 4 and square root of 25. The square root of 4 is 2. The square root of 25 is 5. And when you multiply them together, you get 10. Okay, so you can still use this method even if something is a perfect square. If you're not sure, you could still use this method to split it up. But of course, it's going to be faster if you recognize it as a perfect square right away and just take the square root. Okay, let's look at another example. All right, so we're going to look at things that divide 150, and we're going to look for something that is a perfect square. Okay, now if we're not sure, right, we could always use a factor tree, I know that 150 is 10 times 15. Okay, 10 is 2 times 5, and 15 is 3 times 5. Now when I see this pair of factors, 5 and 5, that's my perfect square, right? So I'm looking at 25, right? 5 times 5, and then the leftover part, 2 and 3. Okay, split this up, square root of 25, square root of 6, and this is going to be 5 square root of 6. Okay, let's look at one more. Okay, I can tell right away that the square root part of this is 100. So I'm going to split this into 100 times 3. Okay, split up my square root, 100, square root of 100 times square root of 3. And then I know what the answer to square root of 100 is, right? This is 10, and I have square root of 3. Okay? So this is really the idea of simplifying these numerical square roots. You split it off into the perfect square part and then the leftover part, okay? And here are a couple different methods to do that, right? You can immediately recognize the perfect square part. You could use a factor tree and look for repeated factors. That makes a perfect square, okay? So in the next video, we're going to focus on how you make the radicand positive. Okay, so I will see you guys then.